I'm Vagish Vyas, a software engineer by profession working in an MNC in Delhi. Lately, I have developed some interest and curiosity on strategic affairs, especially during these times when the world is going through a pandemic and we are in a lockdown situation. And in India, where the border tensions with China are on the rise. I have been reading stuff on the internet and I came across Rajeev Sharma, a strategic analyst who, through his YouTube channel Rajeev Kishkindha, has been talking about these issues. I found his videos very enlightening and decided to connect with him, and also suggested him to create a video book comprising all the videos he has on his channel related to China India relations, China US relations, and coronavirus. Rajiv ji took my suggestion and decided to create a video book and also gave me the honor to be a part of his video book, How to Deal with China. Now over to Rajeev Sharma.
How to deal with China? Friends, this is an important question. And this is an important video. In fact, it is a video book. It is going to be about 2 hours long. Yes, you heard it right. This is a China-centric, deep focus on China. This video book will be 2 hours long at least. In this video book, I'm going to address this question. This question is at the center stage. How to deal with China? In this video book, I will be dealing with various topics. First of all, of course, I'll be dealing with India-China relations. And when we talk of India-China relations, obviously, at the center stage will be the border tensions which are going on between India and China since 5th of May 2020 in Ladakh. First it happened in Sikkim, then now it's Ladakh. And on June 15-16 night, there were bloody clashes in Galwan Valley of Ladakh. Violence which erupted on India-China border after a gap of 45 years. I will be giving more details on that. How the two Asian giants, Asia's top economies, Asia's number 1 economy China, Asia's number 3 economy India, are engaging with themselves. The dance between, the strategic dance between the dragon and the elephant. So after that, I will be talking about China and the virus. That will have several strands. First of all, there are theories, conspiracy theories, that this virus was synthetically generated in a lab in Wuhan with some military purpose. So, in fact, the second topic will be how the rise of China is threatening world peace. So, in this there will be two subtopics. One, the Wuhan Lab virus, and second, whether China is secretly conducting or trying to conduct or has conducted a nuclear test. Topic number 3 will be the coronavirus related issues. There are lots of diplomatic strands on this issue. For example, the WHO, China, Taiwan triangle. the WHO, China, US triangle. Then, of course, China and the US on coronavirus. Fourth and last point will be, friends, in this special video book. Fourth and last point will be a special focus. Can US default on $1 trillion debt to China? So friends, I please wait for my further details as I will move from video to video. I'll show some prior footages, prior videos as part of this, which are being collected, because Vagesh Vyas, who introduced this special video, he suggested to me that since I've been giving lots of video editorials on China, he suggested that there be some kind of a one compact video which has all those videos which covers every issue topic wise. So I hope you will enjoy this video. So let me then move on to topic number 1, India-China relations and the military standoff in Ladakh. The topic of today's strategic analysis and video editorial is China. Well, this is a video editorial on China, not against China, because I believe that the better relations China has with India and with the world is better, all the better for the world peace. Now, the question is, let me just sum up, give you the thought process of this video editorial in one sentence, in half a sentence. Is China a lone wolf warrior? Well, this is not I am speaking. This is whatever I am going to tell you now is based on, it is distilled on the basis of Indian and Western media reports and editorials. So, let me elaborate on this question. Is China a wolf warrior? Unfortunately, China is supposed to have already become a superpower, but unfortunately, it is not behaving like one. Wherever it sees opposition or even a spark of an opposition, it starts issuing economic threats, trade threats, or even security threats. Like, for example, it threatened Australia and New Zealand. It threatened many other countries. Why? Because 116 countries in the world have signed up to a motion rooting for an independent investigation into the origin of coronavirus pandemic, which is believed to have emanated from a Wuhan Lab or Wuhan city, which China is seeking to somehow push under the carpet. Now, what has China done? It has threatened New Zealand with trade punishments. It has already taken action against Australia on trade issues. It has banned beef imports from Australia. Next in line are dairy products and other products. What has it done with India? I'm coming to that. But on Australia, which has been its major trade partner, and for Australia, China is a huge trade partner. But look at the Global Times editorial. The Chinese, one of the Chinese state-owned papers. In fact, the entire media in China is state-owned. So, one of the editorials of Global Times described Australia as a giant kangaroo which is working like a dog for the US. Now, let's come back to India. What has China done for India? Or vis-a-vis India as part of its wolf warrior diplomacy? Well, we know that as far as India-China trade is concerned, trade is not an option for China, not something where it can really do something to rankle India, because the India-China trade is heavily in favor of China. So, what does it do with regard to India? Well, what it does is it ramps up security pressures on India on two fronts, on two theatres. One in Ladakh in Jammu and Kashmir, and second in Sikkim in Northeast. According to one media report, one media account, for the first time ever, there are over 5,000 Chinese troops in those areas of India which, even according to Chinese claims, are beyond the Chinese claim lines. That is, they are in Indian territory. 5,000 Chinese soldiers. This started happening from the first week of May. That is about 3 weeks before. Well, China has been upping its ante in Ladakh at 5 points. Four areas are in the Pangong Tso Lake, which is on the borders between India and China, line of actual control. There, and one is another one is along the Gyalan river banks. Well, there are reports that China has pitched up over 100 tents in the territory which is beyond its claims, which as per the Chinese admissions is the India held territory, if I were to say in Chinese language, in Chinese perspective. Now, this is something that is unforeseen, unprecedented since the Doklam crisis, which took place 3 years ago, which lasted for 73 days. This is a serious incident, and I'm sure that India is already taking recourse to whatever is within its gambit, within its jurisdiction. For example, India is beefing up its troops strength in those areas, in Ladakh as well as Sikkim. The Indian Army Chief visited Ladakh recently. Now, this is something which is of serious concern. In these coronavirus times, does it behove of a superpower like China to up its ante to the naysayers of the world? Those countries, 116 countries who have signed up the motion demanding an independent probe into the origin of the coronavirus pandemic. Last week, India also signed. This has riled China even further. Now, let me end this video editorial by saying, China, it is in the greater interest of China to be friends with India in actual, in real terms. Now, things are going back to the Doklam crisis situation. Well, I foresee this crisis to be tackled at the level of National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, who is also the special representative for India-China boundary dispute talks, and the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. Well, fingers crossed, that's all I can say. Military standoff in Ladakh, which started over a month back, to be precise, on 4th and 5th of May night. There are reports that the Chinese army, the People's Liberation Army, is occupying Fingers area in Pangong Tso Lake region in Ladakh, Jammu Kashmir. Over 5,000 troops of them, of PLA, have pitched up tents, are sitting in the territory which happened to be Indian territory before 5th of May, which happened to be Indian territory controlled by Indians before 5th of May. The territory may still be considered Indian by Indian government, but the control is by China now. Folks, isn't it time for the government to come out clean on this? Isn't it time for the opposition parties to be more responsible instead of fighting, bothering more about the upcoming Rajya Sabha elections and elections in Bihar, elsewhere? When will our political parties mature up? Why nobody is talking about this? Why even the media is not focused about it? Why the media has become a handmaiden of the government of India? That's by and large, that is the case. Now, the larger and the more sinister question is that in 1962, India and China fought a war. And China got to occupy a vast tract of Indian territory since then. But now the question is, today, 58 years later, China is yet again occupying Indian territory. And this time without fighting a war. In 1962, at least they had paid a price. They had fought a war for a month. This time, not a bullet has been fired. And Indian territory has come in control of Chinese. Well, Prime Minister Narendramodi has not come up with any statement, nor has the government or any minister come up with any statement. Equally damning is the silence of the opposition. Why? No party has demanded a white paper on this issue. Why it is being considered a sacred cow? In the name of national security, in the name of, you can't push issues and questions like these under the carpet. Now, the question is, will Modi government issue a statement on what is the status? Who is occupying the fingers area in Pangongso region of Ladakh? Important question. It cannot happen. It cannot be business as usual anymore, any longer. It cannot be the swing diplomacy that you have, Jhula diplomacy at the summit level and fisticuffs at the borders. You cannot have a walk in the garden at the summit level and skirmishes on the border. There is a huge disbalance. Now, this has to be corrected. Why China is doing it, that is a separate issue completely. Of course, China is doing it because they want to send a message to the Hong Kong protesters. They are coming up with a legislation to end Hong Kong's autonomy once and for all. They have to divert the world's attention from China being dubbed as the progenitor of coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, China is really riled at an international effort by 116 countries to have an independent international investigation on the origin of coronavirus pandemic. Of course, all that is there, but that doesn't mean that China should target any country and every country. It has been doing that. And if each country's, keep on braving it silently, the Chinese behavior, then each one of them will sink separately. And of course, Chinese are aware of this. Yet another reason of the Chinese behavior is Indo-US increased, proximities, and of course, the Quad, the strategic quadrilateral involving US, Japan, India, and Australia. Australia is going to get into the Quad probably very soon. Now, the Malabar exercises, Australia is going to get there. And Australia, which had rocked and ripped apart Quad many years ago, is now going to be an important member there. Now, all that is there. But the question is, will Modi government issue a statement? Because as the BJP's prime ministerial candidate, Modi had poo-pooed the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and had ripped him apart over his policies on Pakistan and China. On Pakistan, he had said that you need a 56-inch chest, and on China, he had said that you need to look at China with red eyes. How should Narendra government deal with China now? After the Chinese soldiers indulged in an unprecedented bloodbath on the world's highest snow desert, Ladakh, Galwan Valley. Will PM Modi do these 5 things, which I am going to enlist and enumerate very shortly? Folks, watch this video till the very end, especially those who are UPSC civil services aspirants. My name is Rajeev Sharma. Well, today afternoon, that is 17th of June, a bit of melting the ice took place between India and China after the bloody clashes in Galwan Valley on the intervening night of June 15, June 16. When there was a telephonic conversation this afternoon between Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. After this, MEA did issue a strongly worded statement, though MEA did not specify at whose behest the call was initiated, whether India initiated the call or whether China initiated the call. In diplomacy, this is a very important diplomatic symbolism. Anyway, the MEA statement detailing the Indian position and some details of the conversation made it very clear that the Indian foreign minister told his Chinese counterpart that the Galwan Valley violence and clashes will have a very serious impact on the bilateral relations. I've been keeping a watch on international affairs for close to 4 decades. I do not recall a single occasion when India issued such a warning, veiled threat to China in as many words in last 4 decades. And Modi government needs to be commended for this. India has to stand united behind Prime Minister Modi in these difficult times. He has called an opposition, an all-party meeting also on this issue. On June 18 at 5 p.m. So we will see what happens there. I am sure that all opposition parties will support Prime Minister Modi on this. Now the question is, PM Modi, who as BJP's Prime Ministerial candidate taunted the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh over his dithering with China and said that you need to show red eyes to China. Now time has come for Modi government to show red eyes to China. I don't know what Modi government is going to do, but I will tell you, I will enlist and enumerate 5 steps. If Modi government does it, that will be more than red eyes to China. That will be more than showing red eyes to China. Step 1. Will India denounce China for scrapping Hong Kong's autonomy? So, point number 1, Hong Kong. Will India take up Hong Kong issue just to needle China, just to poke China in the eye? Point number 2, Xinjiang and Tibet. Will India criticize China over Chinese human rights violations in these 2 regions? Xinjiang, which is Muslim dominated, and Tibet, as you know, which is Buddhist dominated. And in both the places, the Chinese governments after governments for years, maybe over decades in fact, they have been trying to change the demographic profile of both the regions, Xinjiang and Tibet. So, will Modi government issue a statement criticizing China for its alleged sins of omission and commission in Xinjiang and Tibet? Point number 3, trade sanctions. Folks, we know that China is exporting much more to India than India is exporting to China. So, the balance of trade is heavily in favor of China. The trade deficit at our cost is $60 billion, 60. And in these coronavirus times, when the world economy is shrinking, when for the first time in decades, for the first time ever, China has stopped giving annual projections of its GDP growth because of coronavirus. So $60 billion will mean quite a lot for China. Will Modi government show guts and impose unannounced trade sanctions on China. There have been a lot of calls, a lot of campaigns to boycott Chinese goods. But the initiative will have to come from the government. Will Modi government stop all imports from China? But there are reports today that Modi government has awarded a contract of Delhi Meerut bypass, a rail project to a Shanghai company worth over 1100 crores. Well, I understand that this could have been done before Galwan Valley clashes. I'm sure of this. This project may not have been cleared today or yesterday. But having said that, well, let there be a beginning. Let the government, because the number 2 was an Indian company, let the Modi government cancel the project to Shanghai company and award the project to Indian company. Point number 4. Well, China has been issuing stapled visas to those Indian passport holders who are domiciled either in Arunachal Pradesh or in Jammu and Kashmir. Question is, will China, will Indian government, will Modi government start issuing stapled visas for so-called Chinese citizens who are domiciled in Tibet? Or to broad base it further, who are domiciled in Xinjiang? And let me come to the number 5, the last point, the mother of all points. That is Taiwan. Will Modi government step up engagement with Taiwan publicly, not covertly, not secretly? Will Modi government at least have full-fledged diplomatic ties with Taiwan, for example? Full-fledged means full-fledged with all pomp and show. Right now it is pushed under the carpet. They have some consulate here. We have some consulate there. So, whether that diplomatic engagement will be revved up with Taiwan, because China has been insisting on every country to toe the line of one China policy, that is, there is only one China, that is People's Republic of China, that is Communist China. Whereas all those countries who give recognition to Taiwan, China just ignores them, just becomes punitive with them. So as a result, very few countries can dare to do that, considering the economic might of China. So friends, these were the 5 points which Modi government can show, can do, should do to show red eyes in real terms to China. Well, the biggest headache for the Narendra Modi government is proving to be the most unpredictable neighbor, a nuclear armed giant, China. China had pushed the envelope 3 years ago and taken things to the brink during the Doklam crisis, which lasted 73 days. That was 3 years ago, 2017. But today, what is happening in Ladakh is something far bigger and perhaps far more sinister. On June 6, for the first time ever, the Lieutenant General level talks were held between India and China at Monodo on the Chinese side of the line of actual control, which looks across Chushul, which is on the Indian side. The Indian side was led by a Lieutenant General, the Chinese side was led by a Major General, which is an equivalent to the Lieutenant General as per the Chinese military setup. Now, on June 7, nothing happened except the NEA gave a usual bland statement that these commander level talks were held in cordial and positive atmosphere. But hours after this statement, on June 7, the state-run Global Times of China ran a several minutes video and tweeted about the latest red rag from the dragon, that the Chinese military maneuvers by large number of troops, including airborne units in northwestern China, Hubei, and mind you, Global Times tweet did not forget to mention amid India-China border tensions. That is, Global Times very clearly stated, left nothing to imagination, that these exercises in Hubei, northwest China, were held amid India-China border tensions. Now, this is the favorite tactics of China. This is a psyop, a psy war, a psychological warfare that they try to browbeat the opposition. But this is not the 1962 India. Today's India has come a long way since 1962, when it had its nose bloodied in the only war which India and China have fought. But almost 6 decades have gone by since then. India is a different ballgame. China also is well aware of that. China understands only the tough language, tough actions. And it looks like after this Global Times tweet and about this video about the military maneuvers, things have become all the more complicated for the Modi government. And mind you, none other than the US President Donald Trump had said famously a few days ago in context of China that PM Modi is not in a very good mood these days. So obviously things are weighing down heavily and must be weighing down on PM Modi's mind how to deal with China. Donald Trump had given his offer of mediating between India and China. First India rejected it, then China obviously rejected it. Now, how to deal with China? This was the question which was asked to the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh when he visited Tokyo. His Japanese counterpart had asked him about a decade ago how to deal with China. And my diplomatic sources still told me at that time, which I repeat, which is of relevance even now, which will be of relevance for all times to come. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's response at that time was that don't push contentious issues with China under the carpet and stay engaged with China. Try to resolve all the issues across the table diplomatically. This is what Manmohan Singh had said. This is what the Indian strategy was. Looks like that Indian strategy has not undergone any significant change during the Modi regime also. But the question is, now after Doklam, what China has done is far more serious, far more sinister, as I said. First, the European Space Agency gave satellite imagery of China moving heavy equipment, large number of troops across the LAC, line of actual control. On June 6, just when the commander level talks, military level talks were going on between India and China, Indian Express quoted Colonel retired S. Dinny, who had served in the sector, the concerned sector of Ladakh, as saying that the latest satellite imagery shows that Chinese have constructed substantial structures. In fact, reports are that over 5,000 Chinese troops are occupying the area which was till last month was held by India. This is on the Indian side of the LAC. And many senior Indian army commanders, retired generals have gone on record as saying that the finger area in Ladakh has come under the Chinese military boots. In fact, it won't be wrong to say at this point of time that this is Kargil 2.0. This time, Indian territory has not been occupied by a lesser enemy called Pakistan, but a much more potent and much more unpredictable and much bigger and much more prosperous neighbor, that is China. Let us check the Chinese checkers. Let us read Chinese tea leaves as long as it comes to the current China border tensions. For the first time in 3 years, since Doklam crisis, 73 days long it lasted, the Doklam crisis. The current standoff in Ladakh and Sikkim is being witnessed, which has triggered an unprecedented reaction from US President Donald Trump, wherein he has proffered his mediation and his arbitration, which of course India cannot accept, because any third nation mediation in its bilateral affairs with another country is not possible doable with India, because if India accepts US mediation with China, then it will be laying a dangerous precedent, and it will have to accept a similar situation on the Kashmir issue with Pakistan. Well, the focus here is, the trigger here is a significant, sensational remark from none other than but Chinese President Xi Jinping. wherein he has asked his army, his military, to be battle ready and to take care of the nation's sovereignty. Now, this is too dense, this is too significant coming from the Chinese president. Why did he make this statement? I see three reasons. One, I think obvious reason is that he's trying to deflect the world attention on China due to the COVID-19 crisis, because 116 nations have supported a transparent global investigation into the origins of coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic, which is known to have emanated from Wuhan, China. Second, it has probably the Chinese president is deflecting, he's addressing his domestic constituency. Because he's facing a lot of problems within because of the way he has dealt with the COVID-19 crisis, the way he has dealt with Hong Kong, etc. Third, he is sending a strong message to Hong Kong protesters. He is bringing in a new law, new legislation for Hong Kong, which will be end of the road for autonomy in Hong Kong as far as the Hong Kong autonomy is concerned. Autonomy will be gone. So he is trying to not only speak tough, not only act tough, but he is trying to be seen as tough. And that is why his tough stance towards Australia, towards New Zealand over trade issues, towards US over multiple issues. So with India, trade is immaterial. In any case, whatever trade is, the balance of trade is in favor of China. So that doesn't work. The trade is not a good enough handle for China. So here, an effective handle is border dispute. So that is why China is upping its ante. That is one part of this video tutorial. Now, part 2. Let me see, India, like during the Doklam crisis, India did not back down. Similarly, India has made it very clear it will not back down. And I'm sure no party can hope to be in office in India, irrespective of which color, which creed, which ideology, if it were to subjugate to a foreign country, particularly China. So the BJP government has no option but to take a bold stand, which it has. The problem is that this is far worse than Doklam. Doklam was confined to just one zone, a small zone, geographically. It was confined to a very small number of troops. In comparison, in contrast, here over 5,000 Chinese troops are there. At 5 points, where the 5 flash points in Ladakh. And they have ingressed as far as 3 kilometers into the Indian border. So this is something unprecedented. Now, China must understand that it is upping the ante, but it is it has to prepare itself for post-COVID times. These are the COVID times. It is already dealing with a vociferous and a highly critical US. Europe was in its favor. Now even from Europe you can see dissenting voices. China so far had its telecom prowess to sell to the world. Now, if such diplomatic tensions continue, how China can, Huawei and whatever their 4G, 5G, their software, how they can, this business is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars. Now, another point, that the Chinese President Xi Jinping's very brave talk and aggressive talk comes after the Chinese defense budget was hiked by 6.6% and raised to $180 billion, well over 3 times than India's defense budget. These are the points which China must consider. Well, whatever defense budget China has to have, India or any other power cannot complain. Let them have $1 trillion defense budget, who will complain? But that's not a question. Question is that China must realize that it is a de facto superpower. And superpowers do not act by knee-jerk reactions. Army Chief General M.M. Ravane has gone on record today as saying that the entire situation along the line of actual control with China is under control. And he has also said that some disengagement has taken place, and whatever it is, the rest, the remnants, that also will be taken care of. There are reports that Chinese troops in large numbers, in significant numbers, have retreated by 3 kilometers. But that isn't enough. And because Chinese had incursed 8 kilometers into the Indian territory in Ladakh, in the Pangong So region, that is, So means lake, Pangong lake region, and the Galwan Valley. Now, why I say that China should dismount from its high horse? Well, there are 3 reasons. One is economic, second is diplomatic, third is strategic. And all 3 are intertwined. First of all, China must realize that if it wants to be a superpower, which it aspires to be, then it has to have a restrained behavior. It cannot go on nibbling into neighbors' territories or up its ante here, there, everywhere in South China Sea, within its own territory, one China, 2 systems like Hong Kong and India. Economic reason is very important. We all know that Chinese statistics, Chinese figures are taken with not with a pinch of salt, but with a bucket full of salt. That is the credibility of the statistics. The last one was proven during the coronavirus pandemic, The world is still confused when it emanated, whether it emanated in November, December last year, or as early as in August, as an American study has offered to say. Well, so since the Chinese statistics are not to be trusted, even as per the Chinese admissions, their economy is not in a rosy situation. The Chinese economy is in bad shape. It may be in dire strait, we don't know. But since it is a one-party rule, since it's not a democratic country, since the structures there, the statistics there also are not transparent, so one can surmise that the economy there may be far worse, though we don't know actual truth. Even if, let's push it under the carpet, the actual truth. Let's go by their own admitted figures. See, China, for the first time in over a quarter century, has done away with annual projections, growth projections. Simply. No. More importantly, the coronavirus pandemic is going to cost hugely, diplomatically and economically, as well as strategically, to China in months to come, perhaps in a year to come. Australia. Okay, I'll come to the strategic part later. I was talking about economic part. So, EU, European Union, had already been won over, sort of, by China during the pre-COVID times. Huawei is an example. Many European countries preferred Huawei for their 5G network as their own networks were proving to be much costlier. And EU was at loggerheads with US because US has all along been, Trump administration has all along been, has been raising a red flag, a red rag over Huawei, saying that these will compromise the security in of the nation, and these are listening devices, and they will penetrate deep into the structure of political, social fabric of the country. So now European Union is showing signs of realizing its mistake and shaking the dragon off its back. It may cost huge economic terms, on economic terms, as far as China is concerned. Also, we don't know whether several European countries which are really hardest hit in terms of number of deaths, in terms of number of cases of coronavirus positive, they are preparing to send a bill to China. For example, German Bild paper has actually drafted a response, a bill running into hundreds of billions of euros. UK and France may not be far behind. And then what about US? What about Brazil? What about Russia? So, economically, China must dismount from its high horse for economic reasons. Now, come to political. See, its good friend Russia. See where it is on the coronavirus table. Over 500,000 cases. Russia too is not a democratic country. Russia maybe, and Russia is seething under the oil price crash. Russia needs China, but they must be seething with anger over the Chinese virus, so-called Chinese virus. Australia, which used to be the wrecker in chief, which was the wrecker in chief of Quad, strategic quadrilateral involving US, Japan, Australia, India, many years ago, is now in the forefront of 116 countries who are demanding an international transparent investigation into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic. And as recently as yesterday itself, in fact, Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, has gone on record as saying that we will not be intimidated. We will not be intimidated by China. China has been mooting the proposal of stopping its students from studying in Australian universities, which is almost a $25 billion industry per annum for China, for Australia, sorry. Now, let's come to the strategic costs. I have already mentioned Australia, Quad. This is one. Quad is being reformed. As I said in one of my earlier video editorials on Indo-Australia Virtual Summit, at the first ever virtual summit between India and Australia, it was held very recently, last week, and indications are that Australia will be drafted into the Malabar military exercises. Also, Australia will be back in the Quad. So, it is in China's interest that China withdraws all its troops from India, from Ladakh, and return to the pre-May 5 situation, status quo ante. The topic of today's strategic analysis or video editorial is Nepal and Nepal's relations with India. What prompts this video? Three things. Number one, about a week back, India constructed an 80-kilometer road near the Lipu Lake region, which is an area of hot dispute between Nepal and India. This was done by India largely to facilitate road travel by Kailash Mansarovar pilgrims. Number two, two more developments. One is the Indian Army Chief, General M.M. Narawane's highly sensitive and significant remark about the protests from Nepal which followed the construction of the Indian road near Lipu Lake region. The Indian Army Chief said that the Nepalese protests he dismissed them as proxy protesters. Nepal as proxy protesters. Actually, he hinted, without mentioning by name China, but he hinted very, very much that it is China which is driving from the back seat, and the Chinese are inciting the Nepalese for protesting over the development of the road construction around Lipu Lake. 3. The Nepalese president has said, Vidya Devi, she has said that the Nepalese constitution, the Nepalese political map will be released, a new political map will be released, which will show 3 regions, Lipu Lake, Kalapani, and one more as a Nepalese territory. This is in response to the political map issued by India in 2015. And almost concomitant development and a serious development, unprecedented development is that for the first time ever, Nepal has deployed armed troops along India border. Well, these are the triggers of today's strategic analysis, and these triggers actually denote that all is not well between India and Nepal. And Nepal is a crucial country for India. It is one of the only two countries in the world with which India has an open border. We have an 1850 kilometer long open border between India and Nepal. And Indian currency is welcomed in Nepal. 6 million out of 30 million Nepalese are living and working in India. In contrast, 6 lakh Indians are living in Nepal. Much is at stake for both the states. And of course, China forms the third angle of this triangle. In fact, this Lipu Lake controversy got triggered in 2015 when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited China and signed, among the agreements which he signed with China, one was relating to setting up of a trade outpost in Lipu Lake. At that time also, Nepal had protested. And well, 1 year later, that is 2016, the Nepal-India bitterness reached its climax when Nepal had come with a new treaty in place of the 1950 Peace and Friendship Treaty, and this was followed by a very, I would say, very nasty development. That is the blockade. The blockade divided the Nepalese polity, the Nepalese politics, the Nepalese people among the two regions of Nepal, that is mountain, the valley region of Nepal, the mountainous region of Nepal, and the Tarai. This is something which exposed the fault lines of Nepal. As far as India is concerned, India's consistent stand has been that India is for the peace, prosperity and progress of Nepal, in Nepal. And a stronger Nepal is in interest of India. And the vice versa is not true. That is, if Nepal were to get into a state of turmoil, it is not good for India. Incidentally, Nepal is the only country which has been paid so many bilateral visits by Prime Minister Modi, as many as 3. Despite that, the relations between India and Nepal are on a downhill. So much so that the social media is agog with all kinds of provocative posts, all kind of provocative statements and remarks. Some of them suggesting that today there are only armed guards deployed by Nepal on its borders with India. Tomorrow there may be tanks deployed. This is something highly outrageous, to say the least. The two countries which have had a porous border, an open border, deployment of tanks or deployment of armed guards is something unthinkable, undoable. Well, Nepal has been asking India for a foreign secretary level mechanism to iron out the differences, to discuss the issues at hand. And they have suggested as many as 2 dates also for this meeting. But India has suggested that let the two countries deal with the COVID-19 pandemic first, let the two countries emerge as victors in this war first, and then we will take up that thing as well. So which means that for perhaps many more weeks, if not many more months, that foreign security level mechanism may not be possible. So till that time, when it is not possible and when it becomes possible finally, after a few months perhaps, till then the two countries should hold their horses. Diplomacy and mature diplomacy is the way out, not knee-jerk reactions. Well, I understand that there is a lot of angst, a lot of bitterness, a lot of anger among the Nepalese over the Indian Army Chief's remark, more so because Indian Army Chief also happens to be the honorary chief of Nepal Army. A rare honor which Nepal does not give to any other foreign country, including China, its best friend. Now, we should also realize, and I hope India does realize that it is absolutely Nepal's own business with which it has friendship. China, for instance, China is a sovereign country, Nepal is a sovereign country, and if the two decide to go together further down, let them. It should not affect India-Nepal relationship. And also, the China factor has always been there in Nepal and will always be. Edition of strategic issues. Let us discuss coronavirus and the political issue, whether coronavirus has something to do with biological weapons, whether coronavirus was a biological weapon being secretly made by China. Now, these could have been rumors. We don't know. But none other than an American senator, Tom Cotton, a Republican senator, he has gone on record as telling the Senate in a hearing with military leaders that this coronavirus has come from super laboratory of China, where it is indicated that it was actually a biological weapon which China was designing, preparing, and it went out of control. Now, one can understand because Tom Cotton is his views are well known. He is rabidly anti-China, but nonetheless, he is a senator of America, and he has not made this comment in social media or in some other platform in a public event. He has made this comment at a formal official Senate hearing. Now, then you see the contrary picture. The conspiracy theorists are really working overtime as far as coronavirus are concerned. In Russia, the media outlets are carrying reports that coronavirus is the handiwork of United States of America, and US deliberately somehow smuggled it inside China, Wuhan, to denigrate China and to harm China. Well, as I said, these are all conspiracy theories. I don't think that these will ever be proved. Coronavirus, yes, it is the deadliest mass disease that has rocked the world yet. It is much deadlier than the SARS outbreak. And look at the global impact financially, economically. There have been reports that it will set back the Chinese economy by inflicting a loss of $400+ billion. I think this may well be much bigger. The actual figure may be many times over. It can cross $1 trillion mark. Over 500 people have been killed. Thousands have been infected. Maybe more than 100,000. Over 25 countries now are battling with this coronavirus, including India. So, when you come across such conspiracy theories, whether coronavirus was a secretly a secret biological weapon that was under preparation by Chinese, that is something we will have to wait and watch. Keep our fingers crossed. Thank you. April 14. Today, there's a damning disclosure, and this will be a compelling reason for you all to watch this video till the end. This damning disclosure may change the bilateral relations, may affect the bilateral relations between China and US, and it can deeply impact China on the global stage. It's a huge embarrassment for the Trump administration. And we will end the video with some nuggets of updates. But first, the damning disclosure published by a UK paper, the Daily Mail, saying that the premier health body of the US, NIH, National Institute of Health, had funded $3.7 million, or in rupee terms 28 crore rupees, to the Wuhan Lab for conducting experiments on animals, dangerous animals, experiments on animals, for conducting research on virology. And this Wuhan Institute, it is known as Institute of Virology. From where this virus is alleged to have originated. There are two theories actually, I'll come to that. But that Wuhan Lab, that Institute of Virology, this is at the epicenter of the media storm, the diplomatic storm, and all kinds of conspiracy theories. Well, according to this report, the NIH had released $3.7 million. The funds are still being utilized by the Wuhan laboratory, and the Wuhan laboratory shows NIH as its partner on its website. Now, the NIH funded tests conducted in the Wuhan laboratory had conducted the tests on bats. The bats were captured from a cave in Yunnan province, which was about 1600 kilometers away from Wuhan. And those bats were captured, brought to the lab, and there the tests were conducted. I may recall here, several weeks ago, a couple of months ago, US Senator Tom Cotton had gone on record as saying that this virus has originated from the Chinese lab Wuhan, P4. It is also known as P4. What Tom Cotton had said then, it has been not only confirmed and corroborated by the Daily Mail expose revelation, but the Daily Mail has come up with a lot of more information, more disclosures, more points. For example, it says that the Wuhan lab is situated just about 32 kilometers away from the wet market of China. Now, let me tell you the significance of the wet market here and how wet market is connected with the Wuhan laboratory P4. The wet market, it is another theory, conspiracy theory, you call it whatsoever. But this has been in the public domain, and this has been doing the rounds, and it is a part of the serious discussion. It is not just a gossip as far as the Americans are concerned. Well, the Chinese have been obviously debunking it. So, as per that narrative, the wet markets are primarily responsible for the origin of coronavirus. Now, why? In these wet markets, the animals are sold. Birds and animals are sold. Birds like, animals and birds like bats, pangolins, dogs, cats are sold for human consumption. And it has been alleged already that one of the bats which was tested upon in the Wuhan lab, it was later sold to the wet market, which is just about 32 kilometers away from the lab. and that bat was eaten by a Chinese, and from there the genome entered in his body. Now, this is the connection established by the Daily Mail article today. Another exposure or disclosure made by the Daily Mail paper is that the Chinese authorities have now put a clampdown on all scientific research being published without being verified and vetted by the Chinese authorities first. Now, this is something very important. Let me, before I move on to the thumbnails of news, let me just tell you that this can be very serious for China, considering the fact that already momentum has been building up that China must explain, that China must pay up. And if that were to happen, then this is something that it is going to be a huge international controversy. And lastly, let me cap this part of the news by saying that what a tragedy, what a comic tragedy, what a tragedy it is, what an irony, supreme irony, crowning irony, that the US purchases its own death. As the cases are rapidly piling up in America. In America, US has emerged as the biggest affected country in terms of number of cases, in terms of number of deaths. So, this will be further investigated, and I'm sure that this will snowball into a major controversy in days and weeks and months to come. Now, let me come to the few points, a few nuggets here. Well, India has extended its lockdown. France also has extended its lockdown till 11th of May. But another thing, Poland has taken a decision of sending children under the age of 11 to schools. Schools have partially opened for that. Britain has reported a very weird case that, like it has happened in Italy and Spain, Britain has been afflicted with a major problem, a unique problem, that as many as 2,000 nursing homes have been affected by the virus. So it's a very another supreme irony case of the grass, the fence eating the grass. Now, in Europe, Austria, Spain, and Italy have resumed activities to spur up the economic growth. And France has already said, while extending the lockdown until 11th of May, that 11th of May, the objective will be to see how to restart the economy. Is China testing secretively nuclear bombs, small nuclear bombs at its Lopnur site? That's the question. And friends, you must watch this video till the very end, because the subject has huge implications on the G2. That is, the top two powers of the world, US and China, their bilateral relations, their dynamics, and this report will hugely dent and aggravate the bilateral relations between the big two. Now, the details. The US State Department has come up with a report, a damning report on China on arms control measures, and it has alleged that US has noticed secret activities going on at the Chinese only nuclear site, Lop Nur, the biggest one, for last 1 year, and it suspects that it has already conducted small nuclear devices, nuclear tests underground, and thus has contravened the very international norms and pacts which China adheres to. Now, the US State Department also says that the Chinese have done these tests, which is violative of many norms, including the zero yield standards. The zero yield standards, by zero yield one means, in zero yield, the tested device does not trigger the radiation chain, which normally when you conduct tests on warheads and other things. Now, US has not come up with any clinching evidence yet. It says, it admits that it cannot prove its charges, but there is circumstantial evidence. For example, the satellite imagery, which shows the excavation. And if you see the thumbnail of this video, at the backdrop of the thumbnail is the latest satellite imagery of Lop Nur site of China, which shows some excavation activities. Now, Chinese reaction has been understandable, fast and furious. It has thoroughly rubbished the US report, and it says that US is making false accusations, and it says that every year the US State Department comes up with an annual report intervening in the military affairs of other countries. Well, that is the Chinese position. Well, last year a similar allegation was made in the last year's edition of US State Department report on arms control on Russia. Again, nothing has come of that, and there was no further corroboration or further details were shared. Now, what are the ramifications of this? Well, many. First of all, apart from many other tensions between China and US, like President Trump calling coronavirus as a Chinese virus. On coronavirus, both the powers are at loggerheads. As you see, if you have seen in my 2 previous video editions, the Chinese lab in Wuhan has been accused of being the epicenter of and being responsible for the pandemic triggered by novel coronavirus. Now, apart from all these, this is the latest red rag for bilateral relations between the two powers. And that too comes at a time when President Trump has been very keen to resume nuclear talks with China and keep it on a larger scale by including other powers like Russia also. So, obviously, with these kind of accusations, with these kinds of tensions, it is highly unlikely China will come on board, come at the table. It is highly unlikely. Now, also, Republican Senator Tom Cotton has alleged that US has handcuffed itself, Tom Cotton says, and says that why should US unnecessarily bind itself with the what he basically means is that US is walking a one-way street without any reciprocation. And now the question arises, is this a straight accusation or is there something behind it? Is the Trump administration wanting to get out of CTBT and free itself from nuclear testing? Well, the US Defense Intelligence Agency has already estimated that that China will double its nuclear stockpile by next decade. Well, there is a huge gap between China and US in terms of nuclear stockpile. Whereas the Chinese have 300 nuclear warheads, US has 3,800. So there's a vast gap. Now, the question is, if this is a sort of a pretext for US to walk out of CTBT and let the international bodies deal with flouters of CTBT and nuclear test norms on its own and free itself for further nuclear testing. For example, both China and US have approved CTBT, but neither has ratified it. And for the last almost quarter century, China and US have not conducted tests, at least that is on paper. If secretively any of them has done, that's a different matter. But since 1996, when China and US signed the CTBT, though neither has ratified it, well, nuclear testing has been kept on hold. Call it a strategic Bermuda's Triangle or a diplomatic Bermuda's Triangle. A triangle it is. Let's see if it is Bermuda's or not. Here in this video, we are talking about Donald Trump, China, and WHO. The US president is known for throwing to the winds the traditional multilateralism policies of the US sustained over the decades, which have passed the test of various governments, different governments. Governments have come and gone. Those multilateralism tenets remained. But Trump being a transactional president, Trump being a CEO president, he thinks and acts in different ways. Today, we are talking about Trump suspending American financial assistance to the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is the Obviously, Americans have been the biggest paymasters. And for what reason? He has called the WHO chief as the Chinese lapdog. He says the WHO has been towing the Chinese line on coronavirus, while it has been taking money from America, and it has been singing the tunes of China. Now Trump can be faulted on many counts, but here his criticism of WHO is not out of place. It is very much valid. How? See, from the very beginning, WHO has actually sung the Chinese tunes on coronavirus. The first human to human transmission case of coronavirus was reported from Thailand on 13th of January. One day later, WHO tweeted, went on record saying that human to human transmission of coronavirus, novel coronavirus or COVID-19 is not possible. We all know what has happened since then. Second, the next relevant date is 20th January. Now, it is on that date when China admitted about the Wuhan pandemic, about the virus, about the threat of the virus. 20th of January. And well, it started taking massive measures to control it immediately, including lockdown of Wuhan, which followed. Now, WHO ignored the fact that 6 days before that date, the Chinese authorities knew this fact. The Chinese doctors themselves knew that human to human transmission is possible. Now, if that is possible, then it can be a huge setback for the world health. It can reach across the world in no time, as it has eventually. Now, the fact is, over 210 countries and regions are in the grip of coronavirus. 210. Hardly 20 odd countries have not reported a single case. Again, that also a matter remains in doubt, because these are all tiny states or dictatorial states. Tiny states like Lesotho or Vanuatu, or dictatorial states like North Korea. Now, WHO sent its team of experts to China and heaped praise on China in January, when things were developing, when everybody was in a denial mode, not just China, WHO, Donald Trump, everybody. Because the world was yet to come face to face with the real ugly face of this pandemic. Now, having said that, so far so good. Yes, whatever Donald Trump has said about WHO, The WHO is to be blamed for lots of reasons. And Trump's criticism of WHO is not out of place. But at the same time, let's talk diplomacy now. Whatever the reasons are, you don't change boats midstream, do you? You can't. In the middle of this crisis, when over 2 million people have been affected, and US is the worst affected country in all terms, health terms, business terms, industry wise, everything. Job situation, for example, over 2.2 million Americans have registered themselves as jobless for government dole. Now, that is all right, that yes, WHO has left much to be desired and may have acted in a partisan manner vis-a-vis China. But having said that, you don't throw the baby out along with the bathtub. You want to throw out the bath water, but you are throwing the baby alongside. That's stupid, impractical, and it will harm not just WHO but the global health, everybody, including America. Last point, the very reason for which Trump has suspended aid to WHO is that Chinese clout has been on the rise in the world body. But so is a fact. But Trump is himself responsible. For years, Trump has kept the US the US chair on the WHO board vacant for years. Now, the reason is that you want to get even and square with China. But how? You are actually forcing all these world bodies one by one to fall in the lap of China, and you are actually helping China while you are pretending to be countering China, but you are actually helping China to take control of world institutions one after another. That's why it is the Bermuda Triangle of diplomacy, of strategic issues. Well, this is on Taiwan, China, WHO triangle. Well, we all know that the coronavirus pandemic, ever since it started off from Wuhan, China, 5 months back, since then the world polity is in a tailspin. And I can dare say this, that there are going to be enormous diplomatic and political fallouts for the entire world of this pandemic, especially China. For China, actually, it is going to pose a far graver threat and a crisis than anything they have known in past so many decades. Ever since, particularly, their resurgence, their rise as a global political and economic might. Now, Let us discuss the politics of coronavirus, the diplomacy of coronavirus on the global stage. Taiwan, for example, has stepped up its efforts to milk the pandemic in its favor. And a big event is coming up next week in Geneva. This is the World Health Assembly to be held in Geneva on 18th and 19th of May. Taiwan is out of WHO. This is strange politics. This is WHO has a lot of questions to answer. WHO has virtually acted. That is allegation. I am not saying this. This is what the Western media says. This is what world leaders say, that WHO has allowed itself to be the handmaiden of China. And at the behest of China, WHO has kept Taiwan out. Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State of the United States, has appealed to all the nations to support Taiwanese attendance in World Health Assembly Geneva on 18th or 19th of May as an observer. Taiwan has urged India also for help. Now, Southeast Asian countries, ASEAN countries, they are under the thumb of China. They have refused to do so. But the door is opening. Taiwan can sense a foot in the door here. Why? Canada has supported Taiwan's case. But New Zealand has supported. In fact, the New Zealand support came yesterday, and today the developments are that China has berated New Zealand and even threatened of bilateral relationships consequences, that the bilateral relationship will be damaged if they were to support Taiwan. Now, before I come to the Taiwan WHO part of the story, let me tell you that it is not as if that Taiwan was never on the WHO attendance list, World Health Assembly list as an attendee. In fact, from 2009 to 2016, Taiwan attended this meet as an observer. China did not object. But then in 2016, from 2016, China has blocked the Taiwanese entry even as an observer in World Health Assembly. Now, what happened in 2016? In Taiwan, a prominent woman politician, she won the election and she became the president of Taiwan. Now, this is China. The leader's name is Tsai Ing-wen. She's the leader of PPP, DPP of Taiwan. She is looked upon as a separatist by China. Since then, it's a no-go for Taiwan in WHO or in World Health Assembly. Now, the question is, why Taiwan is not being allowed? When in fact, Taiwan is a single country in the world which has dealt with the coronavirus pandemic in an exemplary fashion. It has had just 440 cases and 7 deaths. This is despite the fact that Taiwan is just about 1,000 kilometers away from Wuhan, where the COVID-19 emanated 5 months back. This is despite the fact that it is so close. And consider the fact that US, which is reeling under the pandemic, which has had over 1.2 million cases and 70,000 plus deaths, it is almost 12,000 kilometers away from Wuhan. A country which is just about 1,000 kilometers away from Wuhan, that is Taiwan, it has done really exemplary way of, it has shown exemplary manner of fighting the pandemic. In fact, Taiwan WHO spat started in a big way from 31st of December 2019, when Taiwan shot off a mail to WHO asking, flagging the issue of people-to-people transmission of coronavirus emanating from Wuhan, way back in 31st of December, last day of last year. To which Taiwan, the WHO did not respond. At that point, WHO had refused to treat coronavirus as a threat and as some disease which can be transmitted from human to human. But in fact, now there have been reports that several Western powers intelligence agency has revealed that the Chinese President Xi Jinping had telephoned WHO chief Tedros Ghebreyesus and asked him to defer any announcement for weeks, and in fact 4 to 5 weeks it was deferred. It was only on 21st of January when WHO admitted people-to-people transmission threat from coronavirus. But what Taiwan did, from 2nd of January they started screening all people entering the country, all airports. As a result, they have just 440 cases and 7 deaths, despite the fact that they have maintained close people-to-people contact with China and business contact with China. Now, let me come to the India part of the story. Taiwan has asked for Indian help. Will India help? Will the Modi government support Taiwan's case? And will it say that yes, Taiwan should be called as observer in World Health Assembly in Geneva on 18th and 19th of May? Well, we don't know. But India has a good case for supporting Taiwan, because Taiwan donated 1 million face masks to India. 1 million face masks, crucial help. Taiwan can really be crucial in counterbalancing China as far as India is concerned. That is one view, one strategic view. When China has been creating hurdles, has been creating difficulties before India in the diplomatic fora internationally, in the United Nations particularly, over the issue of terrorism, over the issue of many other, Taiwan can be used as a counterbalancing factor for China. But for that, one needs really strong political leadership and strong political will. When Narendra Modi was the prime ministerial candidate in 2014, before he had become the prime minister, he had said, he had belittled the UPA2 government and criticized the UPA2 government over its dilly-dallying with China, and had said that you should show red eyes to China. Well, the time has come. Well, we see whether PM Modi now will show red eyes to China, particularly after we have had renewed hand-to-hand combat between the troops of India and China in Sikkim. Last week, as reported yesterday, several, in fact twice, and there was stone pelting between the two sides. This came 3 years after the Doklam crisis, which lasted 73 days. So, well, whether India will support or not, we will see. This one pertains to a very tricky triangle of United States, China and Dalai Lama. The US House of Representatives has passed a very important legislation by the margin of 392 to 22, authorizing the Congress to impose travel and other kinds of restrictions on Chinese officials who interfere in the appointment of 15th Dalai Lama. Now, this is something very important. Congressman McGovern, he introduced this bill. This bill was passed by an overwhelming majority, which I said, 392 versus 22. Now, if the bill is passed in the Senate also, which it is likely to, then another facet of this bill, another clause of this bill is that China will not be allowed to open any new consulates in the US until China allows US to open its consulate in Lhasa, Tibet. Now, this is something so important that the Dalai Lama is at the center of things. As we know that Dalai Lama is an octogenarian leader, 84 plus, and his health is not okay. I have reported a lot on this. You can Google search, my name and Dalai Lama, and you will find lots and lots of stories, all of them breaking news, many of them which are yet to happen. It's a sort of a stargazing from my side, people may say, but these are based on solid sources. Much of it remains under the wraps now. Now, let me give you 2-3 points very quickly recap. What is the issue here? The issue is that my breaking news last year was, or maybe more than that, that the 14th Dalai Lama, the present one, he secretly selected his successor, who happens to be a 4 or 5-year-old boy from Ladakh. Now that boy, along with his family, they have been sent to US. US has given them, their citizenship, and they are under the, custody of, under the protection of FBI. And many leading lights of America, they are their proteges, their virtual guardians. Now, as we know that US is very acutely concerned about Chinese interference in the Dalai Lama's succession issue. And Dalai Lama has no love lost for China and vice versa. So this news, according to me, is very important, and a lot is going to happen. It is not just trade tensions. It is not just South China Sea tensions. It is not just power rivalry status which is at stake here. This also is going to be one of those many issues, many red rags between US and China. This is a very important piece of strategic analysis from me today, and you should be watching this video till the very end. The topic is very significant. Can the US default on $1 trillion debt to China as a sort of a financial cost on China over coronavirus pandemic, which started from Wuhan some 5 months back. Well, let me elaborate. A lot of Republican leaders in the US have been making a demand. This demand has been gaining momentum that China should be built. China should be made to pay the costs of the coronavirus pandemic. It started. That is what they allege. Well, the most outlandish suggestion has come from Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator from South Carolina. He has said two things: that let's cancel all debts to China and default on $1 trillion debt the US owes to China, and let's impose pandemic tariff on China. Now, this is something really serious, and as we all know that there have been reports that Germany, for example, the German paper Bild, on behalf of the German government, there have been reports, has sent a huge bill of 170 billion pounds, somewhere around that, if I'm not forgetting the figure, 170 million pounds, 170 billion pounds to China. Now, this is if the US also were to join this bandwagon, then things are really getting serious for China. And as we all know, that China is really getting hemmed in from all sides. And it will be like opening up of a Pandora's box if the threats emanating from US, from among the Republican leaders, if they were to translate into reality in the days and weeks and months to come. Now, let's first of all take a look on what those debts are. How much is the debt which US owes to China? Well, this is kept in the what you call treasury securities. China has kept it, so which comes as a debt to US. As of April 2020, the total debt of the US is to the tune of $24.4 trillion. $24.4 trillion. Now, let me put it in perspective in terms of the top 6 GDPs of the world. That will give you an idea how much is $24.4 trillion. For example, the US GDP is the number 1 GDP in the world with $19.4 trillion. Next comes China, $12.2 trillion. Then Japan, $4.8 trillion. Number 4, Germany, $3.6 trillion. India has just recently edged past UK to occupy the number 5 slot in terms of GDP. Indian GDP is $2.65 trillion, just a shade ahead of UK, which is $2.63 trillion. Now, that gives you in perspective how much that figure is. $1 trillion of debt. Actually, the exact debt owed by US to China is $1.09 trillion. Now, much of this $24.4 trillion debt of the US is owned by Social Security Fund Trust, Social Security Trust Fund, or which is the people's retirement money. The major foreign holders of the US public debt are Japan, China, UK, Brazil, Ireland, Luxembourg, and Switzerland. Only two of them, their debt exceeds $1 trillion. That is Japan, $1.27 trillion, and China, $1.09 trillion. Now, this amount, $1.09 trillion, the US debt to China, which Lindsey Graham is saying that we should not be paying. In fact, Graham says that we should not be paying to China. China should be paying to us. So this is the kind of narrative. Now, can US do it? First of all, well, we don't know what the Trump administration will do in this election year. Trump, as we know, is a transactional president, is a CEO type president. And this is an election year. In November, the election takes place, presidential election takes place, which is not too far off. So he can build up on American pride and make it as one of his major, campaign planks. We don't know. But as of now, such a move will be unconstitutional. Why? Because of Amendment 14 of the US Constitution. Well, this Amendment 14 was drafted, finalized, passed into law in 1868, which is more than 150 years ago. It says that the validity of federal debt will not be questioned. So, if the Trump administration were to embark on such a path, it will be an unconstitutional move. But who cares about constitutionality these days? What matters is the political expediency. Now, also, if the US were to really embark on this path, what will happen? First of all, China will be definitely ugged no end. It can be construed as an act of war. Even if China fights shy of construing it as an act of war, it will definitely lead to a Cold War, which has not been the case so far. And we know the results of Cold War between US and then USSR, and then Russia. When the US and USSR, when they were in the grip of Cold War for many, many years, fortunately, the G2 of today, that is US and China, there have been huge differences, but never the two have been into a Cold War status. This may push the two into a Cold War. China will leave no stone unturned to make sure that that US pays for it diplomatically by all means. Now, it will also it can mean an economic suicide. It can collapse the US dollar. It can collapse the stock markets. Such a move. It can throw the entire global currency system into chaos. Most of all, it will send a signal to the world community that US is no longer a responsible, mature, trustworthy global financial partner. Well, the flip side, if this such a move were to really be implemented, the flip side will be that while all others will be paupers like gold and stocks, gold will be the king.